Hello and welcome to our number talk. Today we are looking at the expression 20 times 24. What we do in a number talk is we use mental math. That means no paper, no pencil, to try to figure this out, and then we come back together to discuss all the different strategies we could have used. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and do that. Pause the video, solve 20 times 24 in your head, and then when you have your answer, unpause the video. We'll look at all of our solutions together. So first, what we could have done is we could have used the strategy of multiplying by multiples of 10, 100, or 1,000. Now it's pretty simple. What we do is we take our 20 times 24, and we say, you know what, 20 is a multiple of 10. And so there's a strategy that happens with that. What you do is you take your non-zero digits. So you're going to take your 2 times 24, and you're going to say, you know what is 2 times 24? Well, I'm just going to double my 24, and that's going to get me 48. So when you're multiplying by 20, well, 20 is just 2 times 10, so you're going to take your 48, and you're going to multiply by 10, or you're going to add a 0. So hopefully you got 480. When we're multiplying by 10, 100, or 1,000, you could just multiply the non-zero digits and then add as many zeros as are left over to your product. We could also use the distributive property here, and we'll be using that multiplying by multiples of 10, 100, 1,000 quite a bit, because we'll be multiplying quite a bit by 20. Let's take our 20 times 24. You might have used the distributive property. This lets you break apart one of our factors so we can get some partial products. As you see, we're going to break apart our 24. We're going to say, you know, that 24 is really 12 plus 12. So we're going to take our 20, we're going to distribute it out, we're going to multiply it by both of those add-ins to get us our partial product. So we're going to say this 20, instead of times 24, let's multiply it by half of it. Let's multiply it by 12, right? So now we need to do 12 times 2 is 24, add that 0 is 240. So we're still going to use that multiplying by 10, 100, 1,000. And then we're going to do that other 20 times 12, same thing. So we're just breaking it in half, doubling the 240, and we're going to get back up to our 480. If we want to use our distributive property, another way to do it would be to break apart our 24. Instead of breaking it in half, let's look at it in expanded form. So let's say that 24 is really 20 plus 4. Let's just break it up into tens and ones. So we're going to end up doing two partial products right here. So 20 times 20, well, that's going to get you your 400, because 2 times 2 is 4, and I've got 2 zeros left over, so that's why I put 2 zeros there. And then I've got 20 times 4, so let's put that in here, 20 times 20. Then I need to add back my 20 times 4, so 2 times 4 is 8, add that 0 back in is 80. So 400 plus 80, that's a pretty easy one to mentally add. We've got our 480 once again. If we wanted to use the distributive property, we don't have to break up that 24. We can keep the 24 just the way it is. We can break up that 20 in half, and that's going to get you 10 and 10, and multiplying anything by 10 is easy. So that's also a great way to solve this problem. 10 plus 10 is another way to think of 20. And we are going to take this 24 now and multiply it back by both of those add-ins to give us our partial products. So instead of 20 times 4, let's just take 10 times 24. So 10 times 24 is going to be 24 with a 0. And then let's take our other 10 times 24. We're going to get our 24 with a 0, and look what we get again. 480 again and again and again. Compensation might have been something that you didn't think of, but it's also a pretty good strategy here. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to take our 20 times 24, and we're going to reimagine this 24, saying, you know what, it's almost 25. And so I'm going to add this one right here. I'm going to make it 20 times 25. Just because I like multiplying by 25s makes me think of quarters. So if you look at all of this, we're now including this plus 1 because now we're at 25. So that 20 times 25, and that's going to get me 500, because 2 times 25, that's 50. Then I got to add that 0. But remember, I added an extra set of 20. Instead of 24 20s, I did 25 20s. So I've got to get rid. Compensation is you add a little bit more, then you take it back. Now we got to get rid of this one set of 20 that we have. And that's going to take 20 away. So that's where you get your 500. Take away your 20. You're going to always end up back at 480. We could also double and half. So doubling and halving, what it does is it takes our factors here, 20 and 24. We're going to end up cutting one of them in half. So let's divide by 2. So let's take our 24 and let's cut it in half. Let's bring that down to 12. So that's why we've got this gray box right here. In order to keep a balanced expression, if I take one of them in half, I need to multiply the other one by 2, double and half. And you actually keep a balanced expression. So that's why I added a second set of 20 here. So I took my 24, cut it in half, took my 20, doubled it, and now I've got my 40 times 12. Well, let's use our multiplying by 10, 100, and 1,000. 4 times 12, that's going to equals 48. Add that 0, look what I get, 480. We can also double in half the other way. So instead of taking our 24 and cutting in half, let's take our 20. Let's cut that in half. So that's going to leave me with 10. So I'm going to get rid of half of my 20. Get rid of that. But in order to keep a balanced expression, I need to take my 24 and double that. So I've got 2 sets of 24. I'm going to get 48, and look at that, that's pretty easy. 48 times 10 is just 48 with a 0 on it. Anything times 10, you just add a 0 at the end. That's super easy. We can also use the associative and commutative property. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at our 20 times 24, and we're going to reimagine that 24. We're going to say that 24 is a 6 times 4. And what we want to do is we want to think the associative property is our grouping property. So it lets us take when we have 3 or more factors. If you're dealing with multiplication, if you're dealing with addition, you could do associative property with 3 or more add-ins, and you simply change the group. You change the way in which it's ordered. So I'm going to take that 20 times 6, and I'm going to shift my parentheses. So instead of 6 groups of 4, I want 20 groups of 6. Now it ends up getting me the exact same problem. 20 times 6 times 4 doesn't matter. You're just going to multiply all 3 together. But it lets me reimagine how I want to look at this. So instead of 6 groups of 4, I want to do 6 groups of 20. Now in order to do that, I need to flip those, and that's where the commutative property comes in. Commutative property is the order property. Lets me flip those. I don't want 20 groups of 6. I want 6 groups of 20. That's just going to be easier. And then I need to use the commutative property one more time. Let's get that 4 groups. There we go, of 6 groups of 20. You could just rearrange these factors any way you want to. But that's what I have here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 groups of 20. And that's pretty easy. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 20 is 120. And now I've got 4 sets of the 6 groups of 20, which means I'm just skip counting by 120s. 120, 240, 360, and guess what I end up at? 480. And finally, we could look at 20 times 24. We could use the associative property. Instead of breaking up our 24, let's break up our 20. Let's reimagine that as 4 times 5. We could do 2 times 10 if we want to. Well, let's just look at 4 times 5. Same thing, we're going to take our grouping and we're just going to shift the groups. Instead of 4 groups of 5, I want 5 groups of 24, which is what you see right here. So I've got 4 groups of 5 groups of 24. So here's my 5 groups of 24. So if I look at my 5 groups of 24, 5 times 2 is 5 times 20 is 100. 5 times 4 is 20. So I've got 120 again. And then I've got my 4 groups of 5 groups of 24. So I'm skip counting by 120 once again. And I'm going to get back up here to 360, 480. So those are just a few of the ways that I found that I could solve 20 times 24. If you found another way, that is fantastic. Go ahead and drop that as a comment on the video. If you are a teacher and you want to use the slide deck for your own classroom use, you can go ahead and find it on my website, 5minutemath.net.